Hi there and welcome to this video on how Betty works. And this is a more technical and mathematical introduction at the example of football, and we're still talking about a betting software to beat the betting market. So here we go. The mathematical approach. So what we have to calculate as exact as we can, or exactly, I'm not sure, as possible the probabilities for whatever market offers a price for. Basic idea. The reciprocal of any such probability is called the true price. Whenever a market has a higher price than the true price, the model suggests a bet. Those bets is what they are all looking for, the so-called value bets. Making consistently such bets guarantees to make you win money in the long run. This is what mathematics promise to you. Validate your calculations with backtesting algorithms, so you always have to keep track. This we saw already in the other introduction, if you check out the other video before, when I introduced Betty already. So I was referring to this once again. Now here we get an overview of how we do this, and this is the more technical part now. We need the parameters. We need to determine which are there and so on. The calculation method for one match. This is a mathematical function. And then there are three ways to turn those goal expectancies into probabilities. Then there needs to be the possibility for manual adjustments, because engines can do an excellent job, but still you have to tell them at some point, and they do exactly what you want them to do, but sometimes you need a chance to manually adjust things. This is a part, maybe not purely mathematical, but you will see if there's a difference between expected and should. You need sometimes to intervene as a human. The update parameters, we have to determine the update function itself, the validation of this whole thing, and long-term bets. I was just introducing this here, how to do this. The parameters, they are divided into the team strengths. This is still maybe sounds a bit, well, what is a team strength? How do you measure it? Okay, then there is the home advantage, there is the goal average, there is the draw factor, and then there are the update parameters. So we have to keep a couple of parameters, and the team strengths themselves are not described in detail here, but usually is, in football at least, what counts is the goals they score. So you have the goals they did score in the past and concede in the past, and you more or less can determine the team strength based on this. How many goals they score per game and how many they concede per game. This is what you consider their strength. And the calculation method, first step is determine the goal expectancies for one single fixture coming up. From there, all the individual parameters plus the league-wide parameters are needed to make it mathematically clean. As I said, it's going a bit more technical here. This technical explanation and approach and mathematical is, of course, I'm trying to show you, first of all, yeah, you should go a bit deeper to understand, and also here or there flexing muscles also show that I've really put something in there, and it's not just an Excel sheet or something that many people made already and are trying to approach this. This one is deeper. So we need it's not a complex function, it's a simple function, it's mathematically clean, but we have to input these parameters and to make it mathematically clean. Once we have those expected goals for the fixture, we can move on. So this is just calculation here. What do we do with those goal expectancies? And there are three ways to turn this into probabilities. And first of all, what you need to know here is there is not just the probabilities for win, draw, loss. It is maybe what matters most for what people are asking for. Did they win? Did they lose? Was it a draw? But it also counts for the tables and who moves on in cups also. But it's not the only thing that people are betting on. And there are like 107 other markets, and it's a real figure. But you can check and look all everywhere around. You find different ways of betting on a single fixture, like corners or halftime score or correct score or how many goals and goal scorers and so on. But this is the betting for a single fixture. There are also other ways for the competition to bet on. So there's lots of stuff we want to determine the probabilities, and not just for the 1x2. It is the most important one, but it's not the only one. And people usually, they spread their variety of betting ways to bet, and they are looking for different markets to bet on and so on. So to pick up and determine, by picking up, it's simulation matter, we determine and we want to pick up or determine all those chances. We need to look a bit deeper how to do this, and then I'm referring to these 3 ways to turn this into probabilities. Requirements, well, what more you need to know? There are these 3 different methods to turn those goal expectancies into probabilities. It's not just a matter of win, draw, loss. Oh, sorry, it was the same one, requirements. 3 ways to turn goal expectancies into probabilities. Method 1 is the Poisson distribution. That is what many people use, but it's, anyway, I'm coming to this. Method 2 is a simulation, and method 3 is this one function. And I'm even approaching for the future. I have a 4th method, more or less. I'm not introducing this now, but there is a more advanced method even. Anyway, the passive method 1, Poisson distribution. They all know and use it, but it is wrong. It does not apply to football. Why? There's a simple answer. But Poisson distribution works provided these events, the goals, occur independently. So goal expectancy for team 1, fine. Goal expectancy for team 2, put them into Poisson distribution. You don't need to understand, and do so as if and pretend they are independent of each other, but they aren't, because people know the scoreline and they react to it, and this reflects in different probabilities. This is not the case if 2 teams play football. They know the scoreline and know what to do, so they react to it. Simple consequence, no independence. So we have to remove this one. It's what many people use, and they think they have the advanced method, understanding this basic mathematics, but it's not the right method. It's not the right method. So I started with running a simulation. As soon as we have that one, we can determine all the probabilities for all markets. This question is not answered, or all the questions are not answered by Poisson. So this one is even a lot better. Anyway, a simulation runs through a game as if it were a real game of football. That's what a simulation tries to do, with those given goal expectancies. We run this simulation repeatedly, so of course we run it 1,000 times. The probabilities will well be approximated, we say mathematically, by the relative occurrence. So how often did the team win? How often was it a 1-0, a 1-1? This is in 1,000, so 300 wins in 1,000, 30%. So this is the probability. Although we have to watch out a bit and introduce our knowledge of football here, so the simulation still has to be handled with care to avoid the aforementioned problem of independence. Because if I simulate, and well, there are several ways of doing it, but just simulate it as if it were a Poisson distribution, so to say, then it would have the same problem of this dependence of each other. We know the 2 teams care for the current scoreline, and we know how to adjust during the simulation. This is something I found already in 1990, and it's doing its job. It does not produce the small drawbacks with simulation. It does not produce the same, results every time you run it. So simulation is still, yeah, it's kind of random, but of course after 1,000 times you could say it is approaching it, approximating it, but it's not always the same result. Even if you repeat it 1,000 times or more, the relative frequency is not a real probability, it is an approximation. Simulation method takes some more time. So of course when we repeatedly simulate, it takes a little more CPU time. If you know yourself, you understand how to do this ultimate step. Method 3, a function. This is the function I found a bit after the simulation. Turn the simulation into a function. How this is solved, of course, it's top secret, but it is solved. The function is fast and reliable. So this does not hold true for the simulation. Function instantly, input parameters, outcome, the probability. Looking for drawbacks, if you do so, maybe 1 or 2 markets need to be revised, because all the markets, you have to check out what markets there are, what people are betting on, and some of those can, but it's a bit more difficult to cover it with this function. But is it a drawback? Well, okay. Manual adjustment, okay, I've been talking about this. Even if an engine can do some amazing work these days, you still need to supervise it as a human, right? We have to check it. I know what I input there and so on. I know what comes out, but here or there, I have to be able to. Not just the need, there's also the will. This is very important to understand, because if you said, here's this engine, it spits out, it gives you all the probabilities and they are fixed, nothing to do about it. So here are all the bets. I don't know, market would break down anyway. But it's also not what you would like to do. But if it were such a thing, then we needed just a single user, because he knows all the probabilities. Yeah, I don't know. It's like Biff Tannen in the Back to the Future. He knows all the results more or less. It's we don't just need it. It's also the will. So you want to introduce your expertise. You want to, and you have to introduce your expertise. This means every single parameter the engine needs as input can manually be adjusted. The more responsibility, the more understanding you have, the better you know where to input your expertise, where you want it in or where you need it in. This is 2 parts, but they are there. I've done it for many years. I'm giving the user the armor to do that. He can study and learn, and then he can use it. Of course, I'm trying to provide all the necessary knowledge or understanding of how to read your statistics and how to improve there. So the update parameters, a touchy thing we need. Every parameter used for compilation needs to be updated by the engine. So this is a very important concept, because many people I know, they produce their Excel sheets or they have advanced features, but usually this concept of updating all the parameters, this is pretty unique, I consider. Anyway, this refers to the individual ones and the competition-wide ones. So every team has its settings, and the competition itself has its settings. And they depend on each other, but they are needed to be kept as exact as possible, and to make the compilation as good as possible. And the difference between expected and real value determines the maximum size of a possible adjustment. And from there, the update factor for this instance determines the speed at which there will be adjusted. So we will always adjust. We have a difference between what we expected and what occurred. Then we say, well, how much of this do we want to, how big the effect should be. There are a couple of different update parameters even. Every game will be evaluated. The team strengths are most important. Here an example, goal expectancies for a game are 1.38 and 1.19 for the other side. Score is 2-0. Home side were by 0.62 goals better than expected, and the value goals expected to score, which is by how much away side had been worse than expected, and the value expected goals to concede. We have to keep that mathematically clean. As much as the one side are better, the other side are worse than expected. Same with the expected goals to concede value, home side 1.19 better, because they did not concede a single one, although they expected to concede 1.19. and this is how much the away side were worse than expected as well. After evaluation of the game, actually the league-wide parameters will also be different because it's a game itself that took part in this competition. There had been 2 goals less than expected, so the goal average is slightly gonna go down because what more can I do? I mean, there had been less goals than I expected, so I'm gonna have to expect a little less for the future. It's very marginal adjustments, but they need to be done. Before we validate, what punters usually find when trying to place bets are statistics. Those statistics commonly are tables, last matches of both teams, as well as head-to-head, all this stuff, table positions, yeah, and so on. They study those stats and try to come to conclusions. The problem doing so, who would they think would not know those stats and make the price accordingly? So even if they, you know, a team won 5 games in a row, who do you think wouldn't know that? So he's going to adjust the price. Anyway, also maybe a team has had bad results in the last 5 matches. Fine, but maybe they played against the top 5, so their results were even to be considered good. So maybe they had a one win, 1 draw, 3 losses, and that was more than expected. That is important to note, and it's important to take care of. Once we have done the calculations, we want to find out if we were any good. So we were doing all this adjustment stuff and everything, and still we will produce stats more or less for the long term. There are more ways to validate the figures calculated than the evaluation of the bets, although this method is commonly applied. I mean, everyone would say, how good is your tool? How much did you win? But if I say, well, I had like 1.181 goals deviation expected and had been 1.82 only, so it couldn't be any better, no one cares. But I have to validate. You can check it too as soon as you have access to the tool, so you can always try to come closer with what you expected to reality. The big difference to all the statistics anyone can find in the net is we always take the comparison of what we expected and what has occurred. Should is comparison. Validation part 2. This comparison expected to occurred minus occurred has a couple of instances. There is the goal average, which one did we expect, what is the one occurred. This can be done for all games, for a specific selection of games, for one league, just to see the stats. What was the goal expected, average expected for those 120, all the games played so far, and so on. So you want to check, you want to validate, you want to check how good the engine has done for you. Although it's trying to adjust, still you may have some basic settings that you still should adjust. There is the home advantage with the same characteristics. There's the 1x2 distribution. How many home wins, how many draws did we expect, and how many away wins, especially the draw. Especially looking at the draws, how many expected, how many occurred. Because this is something market doesn't care. But market doesn't care so much, or the bookies do not care. People do not like to bet on draws, but it's usually because they do not know how to determine the chance or how to approach it even. I mean, you get statistics, but if you have the expected and real value, then you know a lot better how many did you expect, how many occurred. Then you understand, am I doing fine? There are some more advanced statistical functions, still very valuable ones. Just to mention, we can determine game by game the expected goal deviation. Then we sum up all those expected goal deviations for all the games in a specified selection. We compare the totals or the average. If these are close, we can be pretty sure our figures are altogether very good. So this is what I said, but I don't want to go too deep here, just to show you over the years I developed all those methods and I applied them, and of course the results are good, but this anyone can do. As soon as the tool offers these stats, and you can still maybe improve and still come a bit closer. The fourth part of the validation, there's another such function. We can determine the average probability occurred. We can also determine the average probability expected. That is a very unique function, but this more or less refers to how big favorites are there in this competition. It does not refer to home away or the home advantage. That's a different thing. But you have how big are the favorites, so to say, and how big did you expect them, and how did they perform, more or less. So you can compare these two values. And anyway, that's it for now, and I hope you liked it, or I can quickly show you how far I got here with this tool. And anyway, if I go a week further here, we can find more games that are yet to be played, and we can compile one more. So I'm going to show you that it's really doing what I'm promising. Are we getting a new date? Phew. Yeah, here we get all the games, fixtures coming up. So I can, for Wednesday, there is a fixture here. So I can select 2 of them or 3 of them. I can select them all, but let's compile a couple of them, 4 of them. Odds will be calculated and written into the database. Make sure your settings are fine. The compilation warning is not as important as the evaluation confirmation, because after this is reversible. This one you can still recompile if you're not happy. It's of course what people would like to do. So we had these games had been missing here, and now we see the prices compiled. You can compare it yourself with the market. I'm not going to do this now, but this is 2 prices. Of course, they are compiled to 100%. So the sum of these 3 reciprocals, 1 divided by 2.58 plus 1 divided by 3.48 plus 1 divided by 3.08 is 1, equals 1. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye. See you soon.